Brenda Linane, thanks for great information as ever. Do you approve of Holter tests? Are they any real diagnostic value? For the latest in health-related information and ways to save your life, check out the newsletter. Yes, I've had one. You may remember I've shared with the group that I have atrial fib, paroxysmal atrial fibrillation, sort of like insulin resistance. The vast majority of it's totally unknown. People will feel a little flutter or thump every now and then, and it stops, so they go on. Or they may not feel anything at all. So what's the danger with it? Well, the danger is atrial fib, even though it's paroxysmal or happens occasionally and you don't know when it's happening, increases the risk for stroke specifically by 5 to 8 times. That is, it's also by far the most common dysrhythmia that we see with hearts. It's incredibly common, and like insulin resistance, the vast majority of it's unknown. In fact, if I weren't a doc that does this kind of stuff, mine would never have been diagnosed. Well, it might have, because I did get at one point when I was focusing on doing some work for Physician Partners, a really good Medicare Advantage program down in Tampa. I was their chief science officer for a few years, and I was teaching their doctors how to make more subtle diagnoses, how to diagnose undiagnosed diabetes, for example, and atrial fib. One point over about a 6-month period, I started getting increasing bouts of AFib in more common runs. And so, if you get too much of that and it stays, you really want to get your heart out of that by whatever means necessary. One of the last means to do it would be ablation, but I was actually considering it because it was happening so much. And so I went to an ablation expert. We did a Holter monitor, and yes, I was up to 20%. He wanted to do the ablation. And I said, okay, but let me make sure I've lost just a little bit more weight, and I'm dealing with a couple of other things, because there are 3 lifestyle things that are more effective than ablation. One is losing that another 5 to 10 pounds. And, that gets back to the question about what's the optimum weight. Sometimes the optimum weight depends on your risk factors. Another thing is dealing with sleep apnea. And I just shared with you, I've got sleep apnea issues as well. So I could lose another 5 or 10 pounds. I had some sleep apnea problems. And the third one was high blood pressure. Well, guess what? For many of us, losing another 5 to 10 pounds decreases our high blood pressure and decreases sleep apnea. Sleep apnea, not so much for me. Mine is more positional, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, there are times when a Holter monitor makes sense. In fact, if you suspect atrial fib, even if you do a Holter monitor for typically 1 to 2 weeks and don't see one, you know what the next recommendation is? Consider doing it for a month, because, who wants to have a stroke?